You're listening to the AFL Unlimited podcast, where we tackle all the hot topics in the AFL and bring you up to speed with everything you need to know in the football landscape. We'll take a look at this weekend's games and have some mixed discussion about what to expect. Let's head up to the box for the opening bounce. Grand finals aren't won in March, but the Blues and Pies may have just played in one early in the season. The fallout is massive for clubs falling to 0-2, with the spotlight firmly pointed at Carlton, GWS and the Roos. Meanwhile, another suspension to Sam Reid raises the ugly head of the bump conversation for a second week running. Boys, welcome to this week's episode of AFL Unlimited.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Thank you very much for having me on this episode.
Bit harsh calling Sam Reid ugly.
Our fourth gentleman who joins the podcast, he's short by name and he's come up short this week as well. He's a late omission for a work-related injury, but it's wonderful to have the three of us this week without the short man here.
Who's the concussion sub?
Yeah, well, Watto probably in this instance is probably fifth in line. So lots to talk about this week. We've got 3 games to dissect, but we thought it was a pretty quiet week with news, but just today there's been news floating around everywhere, Chook.
Yeah, it's crazy news. We thought the biggest news story, obviously everyone's been talking about it from the Geelong and Brisbane game, is that call, that non-decision at the end of the game. Should that have been dropping the ball? I think most people are on the side that, probably should have been dropping the ball. Some people say, there were calls throughout the game. It's just because it's at the end of the game that it's called. But what do we think, guys? Are umpires scared to make big decisions? We raised it in the Twitter sphere and most said yes, they are.
Yes, a lot of ambulance chasing going on there. And what an interesting game it was. I want to just take Geelong and Brisbane out of it for the moment. We are all very passionate Geelong supporters, and
we're football supporters. Football was a real winner today.
That's absolutely spot on. I think. Actually, I'll get to that point soon.
Yes.
How about you get to a point for us?
I want to get this in suspense.
Yeah, that's right. Blitzers and the umpires came out, I think, the next day or over the week, and they said, it was holding the ball. I can clearly and categorically say that was holding the ball. Mm-hmm. His prior opportunity was sort of manoeuvring and trying to get out, but then it didn't feel like he had a lot of prior. But I'm happy with it being paid holding the ball. Umpire missed on the night. They made a number of mistakes throughout the night, we will admit. But no one's going to mention about the... maybe I'll leave this for the Geelong bit. I better leave this for the Geelong bit. The decision itself. I don't know, Chook. I feel like they had a number of calls throughout the night they'd probably like to have back again. And sometimes I think, if you've got a big crowd behind you, it can sort of impact the judgment. But I didn't feel like up until that moment they were afraid to make a controversial decision. So... it was holding the ball, categorically holding the ball from a Cats fan.
Incorrect disposal,
and incorrect decision. So
it's funny, isn't it? Because they'll pay that free for 95% of the game, but the last 3 minutes and a team's up by whatever, I reckon subconsciously in the umpire's mind, if I pay that free kick right in front of goal, it's quite clearly going to gift this team the game. Not gift because it's deserved, but I reckon just subconsciously. We'll just call play on that one, and then on the other flip side, it's gifted Geelong the game, really, hasn't it? We did get gifted that, but funny that it was Blitzar's birthday the day after, and it was a little universe giving him a little gift.
Yeah. And now, look, we'll admit that there was a number of decisions throughout the game that affected both sides. We saw Brisbane get a number of free kicks, whether in the forward 50 especially, for potential
but they
soft
don't matter
free kicks.
Because it was during the game.
It doesn't matter because it's during the game, so should they have been that close? Did Brisbane kick 2 goals 9? Yes. Could they have kicked straighter? You shouldn't be relying on umpiring decisions so late in the game.
But that
if you
was
do,
definitely a howler.
If you do, you may find yourself on the end of a crummy result and crummy decision. Chook, what do you think of it?
I kind of opened with that. I do think it was dropping the ball, and it was a case of whether did he miss it? I don't think he missed it. I think he just chose not to act on it. Some people are saying, he was in a difficult position. No, his difficult position was he didn't want to make the decision. Yeah. That's what was difficult for him.
Yeah.
And obviously that's why he went ahead and didn't call it and cost a game. So some people are scared to make a decision that costs a game, but 100%. Your indecision costs that game.
Is the bigger decision, yeah.
Did it cost the game?
Well, yeah. Because they were good. They would have kicked a goal.
They had a free kick pretty much in the goal square.
The chances of Geelong getting it straight from the centre to kick another goal and get the victory would have been highly unlikely.
I think that goes back to my point earlier of did Brisbane with those 5 free kicks in front of goal earlier on in the game. Does that inadvertently nearly cost Geelong the game? I'm just kind of going,
Tiz is trying to push that Geelong support.
Let's just take this Geelong scarf off you, please, Tiz.
No,
it's actually Catman sitting here.
No, people will
he's our fourth man.
People will focus on the last second, but that should have been holding the ball. Did Brisbane get those?
He's got a third time on the Brisbane.
All right, I think we've moved on from that. So we've covered some late decisions.
Yes.
Here's a late decision that Reid decided to make, was to raise his elbow and smash Nat 5 into the next millennium. What do we think? It's raised its head again, the bump decision. I think this was 10 times worse than what Dangerfield did, yet he only got 2 weeks.
Reid got 2 weeks.
Do we think it's a case of Danger was, the big story, we had to give him 3 weeks and then we can kind of soften it from now on, even though the categories are a bit...
Yeah, I don't know. The category and the suspension table, it's hard to read sometimes, but...
Read.
Yes,
nice.
It's confusing, honestly, sometimes. We spoke at stages last year about intent and action from intent, and sometimes they suspend on intent, sometimes they suspend on the result of the collision or whatever it is. It's really hard to see how Reid's 2-week suspension marries up to Dangerfield's. Dangerfield's was a football incident. It was just a poorly executed bump. Reid's, although again not malicious and probably not super intentional, he did brace for contact. He knew a player was coming, didn't have the football, raised his shoulder and elbow, and raised off the ground. Fife got destroyed. I don't know. It's really hard to say. 2 weeks off the bat, you'd probably say it's fair, but then I don't know.
In that case, Danger should get 1 with nothing.
It's really strange. I was on record last week saying I was happy for Dangerfield to be a scapegoat of sorts, a martyr of the bump, to stamp it out of the game, and we've seen it the next week. And we said they have to stay consistent on this, and they have. 2 weeks is still a harsh penalty for what some could consider just a football, accident. Yeah. But this was questionable.
Well, I was on the side last week that I didn't think Danger should have got anything.
You were.
I definitely think Reid should have got for what he did, completely off the ball, raising your elbow. There's really no excuses in that scenario. But yeah, I'm also on the side of, technically, the way that they're judging it, every time you go to bump someone, you are initially being reckless, because a bump is reckless by default. So if you bump someone, you should probably be instantly getting a debit from your fine card. And if they get hurt, then you're going to have to get cop a week no matter what, because that's kind of the statement they're making, is that if you go for a bump, you're done. And this coach is already saying, let's try not to bump. And well, congratulations, we're now basketball.
What are your thoughts, Tyson?
We wouldn't read about it, Chook. But I'll tell you what, it's until the AFL gets some kind of system between intention versus outcome, there's always going to be these, I suppose, cases. The fact with Dangerfield is the end result is so severe. I think they categorise it as. With broken nose and all sorts of concussion and whatnot. I think if they've really got to find a better balance there with what a football accident is, as you guys have mentioned. Which Dangerfield, he intended to make a stamp. He didn't intend to break Kelly's nose and concuss him. So the intention there is on protecting myself and making an impact. As a football action, you look at Reid's and you go, well, he's not looking at the ball. Yeah. He's lining up Fife. He's jumped off the ground and then he's, jumped off the deck and hit him high.
Obviously, he knew that contact was coming from Fife, and yes, he probably was bracing for himself, but he also wanted to just go straight through Fife as well. He wanted to put a big bump because he was essentially shepherding Fife, who did not see it coming and got destroyed. And head-high contact is not good.
Yeah, if you got jumping off the ground, there's a clear intention that you're trying to. It's a bit more maliciousness to it.
Maliciousness,
absolutely. Tenacities. So look, happy for a couple of weeks there. If you compare against the Dangerfield one, it's a bit sort of grey, but hopefully players get the message at some stage soon, guys. But Paul Fife and Reid gets his right whack.
Just another really quick one here.
Yes.
We saw Gary Rowan suspended for 2 weeks as well on his hit on Lachie Neale.
He did.
Just want to gather our thoughts quickly and probably just compare it to, we saw in round 1, Asprey and Danaher throw elbows back and connect with other players' heads. No issue
I think
there.
it's a different
What are we
circumstance
sort of thinking?
here. I'd be on the line that this is an issue because, this is a case of action versus impact. I don't think Neil was heavily harmed by it, but the act of literally standing behind someone who's not looking, has no idea what's happening, and doing a proper Barry Hall Staker
Roundhouse,
incident almost. If he'd connected properly, and you can see he probably was trying to avoid actually hitting him in the head by a little bit, but mate, you can't just take a swing at someone. That's just it.
Yep,
You're done.
It's very, very close to another Gaff and Brayshaw incident, isn't it?
Yeah, I saw a little bit of the incident there.
Oh, you saw a little bit?
I did see a bit of the incident. I think Neil sort of initiating. I've been a bit of a, Neil's getting tagged. He was, people getting under his skin, especially O'Connor, who was wearing like a glove all night. And I think Rowan responded, probably not in the best manner, but I'm still trying to get my head around it because he's gone the whack around the body and it's just pushed him. It's put him to the ground, but it's not as though he's punched him in the guts or anything. And it's so far off the ball, it's not really needed. And the intention there isn't good. It is malicious in nature. But I think if Neil didn't fall to the ground and hold his ear, maybe it might have been 1 week.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think
that's a weird one.
The general footy public, because it's been pretty quiet, was happy with that one.
Yeah, I don't know.
To finish,
to go from Brisbane players going down to Brisbane players staying down in Victoria, due to the COVID scare up in Brizzy, they've had to do a bit of a switch around here, and they're going to be playing Collingwood at Marvel, and swapping the games around from later in the season. What do we think? Do we think this could have major impact on Brisbane? They would have gone from 0-2 to getting a home game, which they would have felt more comfortable with, to now being an away game. Potentially, if Collingwood get up and about, could be 0-3 to start the season. It's a concern for them.
Monstrous, I think, and that's the first I'm hearing of that now, and I expected that'd probably be the case that they would be in Melbourne, just with hearing on the radio very recently 72-hour delays in flights until, their lockdown ends, but it absolutely could. But I don't think there's any really other option. That the AFL have got their systems in place and have contingencies for every type of possible situation, just about with COVID. So it's incredibly unfortunate. I think whether it's Brisbane, whether it's a Hawthorn or a Sydney or Adelaide, I think they'll just have to be flexible. It's not ideal at all. They could be 0-3. So it's a very tough one. It's unfortunate for Brisbane. You wouldn't want to be there. But
we'll talk a bit more about Brisbane when we speak about in their review. But we'll head into the first of the games that we've chosen. We're one man down this week, so we're only going to do 3 games. But there were some massive games, some massive ramifications for the teams that have won and for the teams that have lost and are now at 0-2. And one of those teams, Chook, was the Carlton Football Club.
Blues. You may be wondering about Carlton Collingwood. Why did you pick them, Chook? 21-point deficit in the end. But really, it was a big game. Yep. These are 2 massive rivals. I think, Lang, as you raised a point earlier on the Twitter sphere, that they were dead on exact in wins, losses and draws. They're exactly the same. So the Pies have got the one ahead now.
Yeah.
But really, for me, it was picked for one reason. It's my first game of footy I've gone to in well over a year, and the atmosphere was incredible.
Was it electric?
It was amazing. It wasn't the 75,000 they were thinking. There was about 51,000 fans, but every reaction was an amazing atmosphere. I went to the Geelong game the night after as well, and it paled in comparison to the MCG. 2 fierce rivals that were just going at it, loving life. Even the Collingwood chant got me up and about with goosebumps. It was actually a really intense experience, and I loved it being back at the G. And
you actually pulled one of your own teeth out to join in on the Collingwood chant.
But no, enough about the atmosphere and a bit on the game. One thing I noted, just a quick takeaway, I think that Mackay is going to be a titan for the Blues.
Wow.
He is still fresh, and he made a few errors. Darcy Moore played him pretty well when he was on him. But Mackay looks like a beast. He's a strong man. He pushed people out of the way. He kicked 4 goals. Despite having what I thought was an average-ish game, he looks like he's going to be a gun in the future. And did either of you guys catch some of the impact that he was having?
100%. When the Blues were sort of pushing late in the third quarter, he kicked, I think, back-to-back goals. I think Blues kicked 4 goals in a row, and I was like, hang on, Blues are going to run over the top here. And Moore was playing insanely. I think he recorded the 4th or 5th most ever intercepted possessions in a game with 18 for that game, and all of a sudden Mackay's kicked 4 on him, and I'm like, holy moly. But it was good to see a good one-on-one battle again.
It was pretty intense, Tiz.
I did hear that was a great matchup, and I remember seeing a game, Mackay becoming on my radar a few years back. I think it was against West Coast at the MCG. I think he kicked 3, and I'm like, this guy is pretty good. He's got some talent, and sometimes, Chook, you see him and you go, he makes like some silly mistakes, or he, especially against the Tigers, where he played on a few times, got caught, and it was a bit of a not Jenny, Benny Hill music.
Jenny Hill.
Jenny Hill music. But yeah, I mean, the storyline out of this is Carlton probably were favourites to win this game, and again they failed the test. I mean, their game against the Tigers almost stands for naught now. Being that you had to get one of those two to sort of be taken seriously, and Langs, who's driving that truck this year, he's not very happy. But the Blues, look, they show some good signs, but the Pies really opened up the game as opposed to their previous sort of defensive mechanisms, which the Pies fans should incorporate more, and De Goey forward more as well. Looks like a good option. Do you think, Chook?
Yeah, De Goey up forward is probably important. I think he had to play that midfield role a bit with a few missing links in there, but one of my points I put here is Steele Sidebottom brings so much to this team. Like, he didn't rack up the ball. I think he got about 20 touches, but he's just a clear thinker. He knows what he's doing. He's very composed, and he was able to just make sure the ball went to a target and kept the ball flowing. And I think Steele is going to be a really important factor for the Pies.
He made him look so much better, and him coming back into the midfield allowed De Goey to play up forward. And interesting that Carlton pretty much got defeated by 2 Dustin Martin types in their 2 losses. So if you take Dusty or De Goey out of those games, that's pretty much the margin.
It's pretty raw. And the Pies had plenty of times to end it in the 4th. I think if Pendlebury lining up, running straight into goal, you think, here it is, the sealer, and he just missed very un-Pendlebury-like for a composed moment.
He was pretty good.
But I think it comes down to the Pies. Grundy got back a hold and dominated in the ruck. He got over 50 hit-outs compared to, I think, 20-something that Pittonet got in the game. But Grundy's massive for him. I think he's an extra midfielder almost in that team, the way he actually can make good decisions with the ball. A lot of people were writing him off after one game last week.
He had 2 ruckmen. Steph Martin was pretty much tagging him in the ruck. And English was sort of working off him as well.
He's come out and dominated a pretty not great Carlton ruck line, but I think Carlton, I raised it with Mackay, I think Carlton can be a powerhouse very soon, within a few years' time. Mackay looks like a gun. You bring Charlie Kernell back into that forward line, and you've got 2 top quality talents up there, draw the ball towards them. And I think Sam DeConning is going to be a really good ruckman in the future. So Grundy's influence may not have a big of impact if they had that extra muscle, well, not really muscle, he's still skinny kid, but that extra talent in the ruck department. But overall, Pies were really impressive, very surprising, and goddamn, it was good to be back at the footy.
Well, it's going to be a massive game, Carlton versus Freo next week, but we'll mention that later. If they go 0-3, they're in big trouble, and Tiz, you've got the next game, my friend.
That is a big game. I did not see a lot of footy ball over the weekend, but what I did see was a reasonable chunk of Hawthorn and Richmond, the MCG. As expected, Richmond getting the job done, 29-point winners. It was an old up against the new, and the old, as they do, they get the job done. So the key forward is back as well, and so is Jack. Jack is back as well. He kicked 4 goals, and we thought he was cooked at the end of last year, and finally Jack's had his time in the sun. But him, like Tex Walker, we won't touch on Tex too much with the Crows, but Texas kicked 9 goals in 2 weeks, so
actually he's kicked 11 goals, mate. 5 and then 6.
5 and 6. So.
I remember seeing 4 goals too, so he must have kicked 2 more after that. There you go.
Got a couple late, and
thank you very much.
Buddy was back this week too, so the key forwards are very much back.
They must have been on the same training regime together or something. Jack Rewalt,
all hanging out together. So we'll look at the plan for Dusty. That's obviously always the biggest question going into any game with Richmond. So Burgoyne played accountable around the stoppages, not too accountable, but clearly
it's like putting a bit of like tissue paper over a leaky tap. It's like a plan. Like
it was an interesting plan because they had just the basic, Jaeger O'Meara or whoever would start on Dusty before Burgoyne would then get onto him. But in that case, it's too late. You need to have someone there giving him a bump, holding onto him, because his impact, he just explodes out of the contest.
He still wasn't manned close enough in the stoppages. We saw the one that we highlighted where Warple just was ball watching, as they say, and literally. Dusty was just chilling like 20 metres out from the 50-metre line and just walked into an easy goal.
Yeah, easy. One of the easiest goals he'll
No one's goal side of the best player in the comp. It drives me insane. Yeah, that's nuts.
Yeah, people just continually make mistakes there. You need a genuine hard tag if you want to be half a chance against them. We'll wait and see how that all pans out. But whenever Hawthorn challenged, Richmond responded, and Chook and I were talking in the inbox, just saying it's so hard for Hawthorn to get a goal. When they get it, it's great, but then Richmond just immediately responded every time, goal for goal, and they just broke them. So they were toying with them, it has to be said, but there are some good signs, as I'll get to after my next point with Richmond. The pressure and ball movement is so impressive, and you're going to have to go, I suppose, through them if you want to win the Cup in 2021. Their hunger just hasn't wavered one iota. In fact, it seems to have increased significantly.
And Dusty looks absolutely primed as well.
If Dusty looks in career best form now, that's a scary thought for any opposition to Richmond. Mitchell was back to his best at 31, and Kajitsky kicked his first goal for the Hawks as well. So
a lot of the Hawks young kids I really like. Kazitsky was good. Brockman,
CJ is looking very impressive.
Chankwath GF, actually. Yes.
I planned to say CJ the whole time.
He's taken a big leap this year. I didn't think he was that sort of player, to be honest. I thought he was just a defender. But he's like a marking intercept, James Sicily type, plus run-off half-back defender. And he can kick too, so...
I forgot Sicily was there for the whole...
Yeah, Sicily exists too. But Brockman I like. He reminds me of Rankin a bit. Yeah. Just the way he plays. Small forward, very skilled. And stiff for Connor Downey, who was named the... medical sub in his debut game last week. Just omitted from the team. Didn't even play. Must have got some splinters from sitting on the bench. But
on your Clarko?
Yeah, I thought Hawks played pretty well against Richmond, but just probably didn't have the firepower to actually match them.
Richmond structure and coaching strategy it's just too hard to beat. I noticed a few times where they're always confident that they know that there's someone else behind them to pick up the slack. I noticed when Hawks kicked the ball in, one of the defenders actually fell over, and obviously the Hawks guy had clear chance to take a mark right there and then. But guess what happens? One of the other Richmond guys, Bolter, comes right up from behind and takes the mark because he's come up. They know that if there's a stumble or a slip, and they're allowed to take some strides and some confidence because every other man on the field is there to back him up and to make sure they can get it done.
And they know that they're not 50-50, they need to go. They know they have to go because that person slipped over. And whereas other teams would be like, I should have gone, and now the ball's just gone off my head and for a goal. Yeah. They just end it. They full stop every play pretty much. Rare you see them even drop a mark, to be honest. So
they are just so hard to crack through. You just kind of go... Richmond have to... Langs, we touched on this in the final series last year. Richmond have to play badly for you to win.
To beat them. Yeah. And even then, they'll be right. They'll be chomping right at you. So, very impressive effort from the Hawks. Richmond always had that class and that real toughness that was always probably going to go see them over the line. But Hawks fans shouldn't be too disappointed. Absolutely. Now,
big game.
On to the next game. Now, golly gosh, wasn't this the contest? I was actually going to do the Saints Melbourne game, and I was sitting down on my Sunday afternoon getting my notes ready, and I was like, hang on,
in your journal,
this game's just going neck-minute levels.
Yes.
Bulldogs and Essendon, probably one of
Bulldogs
the games.
And Essendon.
Oh gosh, sorry. Bulldogs and West Coast Eagles. One of the best games I've watched recently. It was absolutely pinging around Marvel Stadium. Dogs ended up getting up by 7, courtesy of some heroics late, which I'll touch on. Bailey Williams has risen to an amazing level, even from the midway of last year. He was, a good defender, a good player, And then from towards the end of last year, he just went nuts. And that last 1-on-3, Tiz, I don't know if you actually saw the 1-on-3.
About minutes ago.
Yeah,
about minutes ago.
Literally, probably like 50 seconds to go.
Yep.
He was on Ryan, got the spoil, picked up the crumbs, got it downfield to Bailey Smith. He got it onto Bruce, and then Bontempelli ends up kicking an awesome goal, set shot goal, to go with his 30 disposals and another 2 goals. But I just thought Williams was fantastic. That won the game, and it did remind me of Shane Biggs' effort in the grand final against Sydney.
You love the effort.
Shane Biggs, never forget. But another really unheralded player, I think, is Latham Vandermeer for the Bulldogs, who I've mentioned, I think, in our first podcast.
About 6 or 7 times.
He's an absolute gun. I love him. He's just a hard, skilled, tough player that perfectly complements all the Bulldogs' other sort of mid-forward players that rack up a lot of the ball, and they're not necessarily inside players, but Vandermeer's just got that toughness in the forward line to complement Wallace and Liberatore in the middle, who are pretty much their 3 tough nuts. And then you've got all these like silky players like Bont and McRae and Treloar on the outside. So I thought that was amazing. And Bontempelli, captain's goal.
How does he do it? How is he racking up 30 and kicking these goals? I'm amazed that I was wondering how this midfield was going to gel.
Yeah.
Dunkley wanted out because he wasn't getting midfield time. Everyone seems to be racking up 25 plus touches and just absolutely destroying it. And one quick one I want to say, I was quite insulting towards Josh Bruce's performance last week. He's come out, kicked 3 straight goals and looked like a force that the Bulldogs really need. I said a key forward is an important factor for him. And he looked actually pretty impressive.
He
marries up well with Norton when they're on. Yeah.
It's so interesting. On a bigger topic of that, like we talked about the key forward coming back. It feels like the game style of the last probably a number of years, at least the last 2, it's definitely been apparent that this type of game style is absolutely suits the big stay at home key forwards.
Yep.
It's been great to sort of see them actually kick a few goals. Like 3 was almost like 5. What 5 has been.
Yep.
And the game in general, like we knew it was going to be high scoring when you got the Dogs and the Eagles, who got some big tall timber and some awesome crumbers in there. But no, what a great game! And Bont, we saw in the preseason how good he was looking in there. Now his haircuts set him apart nicely.
We thought Cripps and Bont were on a similar trajectory, but Bont's gone.
He's kicking
way
goals
past Cripps. Way past Cripps.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he's only 25 still.
Yeah,
it's nuts.
It's scary.
It's nuts. Scary. On the Eagle side, they weren't poor at all, and Liam Ryan was dangerous everywhere. Every time he got the ball, he looked like he was going to take Mark of the Year or kick a goal.
He should have been paid that mark.
Yes, he should have. He should have.
Severe non-decision, just like the
theatre of the game.
Brisbane game.
An extra long player in Jermaine Jones was really good with 3 goals. Chook, I know you're a very big fan of JJ.
Yeah. No, I thought he performed pretty well.
He was really good.
I didn't even know he was at West Coast, to be honest. And then I saw the name on the list. I was like, Jermaine Jones. Is it the same Jermaine Jones?
Sure.
And he comes out and he kicks a bunch of goals. He kicked an important one late where it looked like they were just going to end up, overrunning.
But some tackles as well.
But yeah, he couldn't just stop those doggies turning it around.
Nick Nat was really good in the ruck as well, and their big forwards didn't have as much impact as they did last week. I think Oscar Allen kicked 1 or 2 goals, but he wasn't as huge with the 4 he was in round 1. But obviously was a massive test for the Dogs. I know Shorty was big on them last year, and he was predicting they'd be pushing the pointy end of the season. But I think this might be the year where they've actually announced themselves as a real contender already. And oh my goodness, I don't want to see the day when Geelong play Bulldogs, because they're just going to kick like 200 points and just be running around all our retirement home level players. But we've got Shorty, obviously, who's not here, but he did do the Geelong-Brisbane game, so we're just going to hear some audio from him about what he thought on that game.
G'day fellas, Shorty's working the old evening shift today, so sorry I can't join you, but going to take a little bit of a look at the Lions and the Cats, and it was certainly a massive game heading in with the way the 2 teams entered it off a loss, but there were some big talking points, and I'll just set the scene and you guys can just take the reins after I say a few bits and pieces. But I think the non-decision of the holding the ball was what everyone was talking about. I think we're all in agreement that it was holding the ball, but it still doesn't make it any easier for our Lions fans out there. That was extremely costly. And even the Guthrie pass off to Selwood that they do a goal as well probably had a few fans tearing their hair out. So that one's certainly spruiked a bit of discussion. But I also think Lachie Neale being tagged by O'Connor was something that not too many people would have seen. You know, the Cats were without a couple of stars, Dangerfield being the most notable, and clearly the Cats thought, well, we're going to really take away one of your key stars. And you wouldn't have been, heading into the game, you would not have thought that O'Connor would be the man to do it, but he did an extremely good job. I think Neale had 3 touches to half-time, which is pretty unbelievable. And just the fact that being 0-2, I mean, this is why it was built up as such a big game. The last 58 sides to go 0-2, just 5 have gone on to play finals. Now, of course, Brisbane, I'm sure, are good enough to do that, but it does create a little bit of extra pressure. There's no doubt about that. And I guess, we talk about the decision that wasn't paid, but, they'd probably be equally kicking themselves for how wasteful they were. I don't think the umpiring was, atrocious. I think both sides at times had their moments where they felt they got a poor decision here or there, but the fact was that sometimes you cop that, but Brisbane were just terrible in front of goal, which has been something they've struggled with at times of late. And again, some real easy opportunities haunted them. And the Cats' game style is something that I find real interesting, and it's probably gone unspoken about. But I think if you've watched the Cats for a long time, and we all know how they play slow, and I think it was lost a little bit in just because it was such a close encounter. But Geelong's game style is a great 2020 game style. It's not going to get it done in 2021. It'll get them far enough, and they'll win games, and they'll be a good side. But their just inability to take the game on and use to advantage this new rule, they just seem to have no desire to go quickly. And I've seen every other team sort of take the new rules and look to exploit it or use it, different variants, but Geelong just seemed quite happy to play 2020 football, and that will not get you one step further. And I guess from a personal point of view, we're all at the game and just how good it was to be back. Fantastic to be just involved in a thriller and the roar of the crowd and those moments where you're literally on the edge of your seat. So it was great to be there. I can't wait for Easter Monday. Hopefully we'll all get some tickets tomorrow. But I'll talk to you boys soon. Have a good pod. Cheers.
So that was Shorty's thoughts on the game. Interesting, that little stat, 58 of the last whatever teams.
5 of 58.
5 of 58 have finished 0-2 and not made finals, or only 5 of that 58 have made finals. So we spoke about it before, but I wasn't worried about Brisbane being 0-2, and now that they're stuck in Melbourne, I'm worried. I'm big time worried for Brisbane because they've got Collingwood, who just played potentially a season-lifting win, and then they've got the Bulldogs. So that's going to be huge for them.
Lions have the Dogs after the Pies.
After the Pies, yeah. So they could genuinely be 0-4.
0-4.
0-4. That's scary. Yep.
Diabolical.
Yeah.
Hopefully, big game coming up. I can wait for the Geelong Hawthorn game Easter Monday, because if we play like that, we'll get absolutely rolled by the Hawks. I understand they're a young side, but look, the game in general, it was excellent to be back.
It was
a fair bit of a lineup, that's for sure, but that's okay. And look, the Cats, they came out firing. It was 33-7. Could have been even worse had the Cats kicked a bit straighter as well from the Lions' perspective. But we really took the game on early on and had a good crack. We gave Hawk some really good looks, and Hawk was excellent.
Was back to his best of last year. Big time. So
he was really good. And just as the game wore on, Brisbane, starting to win at the coalface, and then they were winning all the ground ball. We couldn't, our pressure really died off. Our forward pressure was nowhere to be seen. Like whenever it hit the ground, where's Rowan? Where's Dalehouse? Where's
Myers?
Where's Myers? And I'm trying to think of the first game. Francis Evans, who was very good with 2 goals.
Good,
I don't want to be seeing Geelong playing the way they did in the last quarter. I don't know why. And Scotty says I'm not going to tell you why to the staff specifically. But Short said it really well. Brisbane kicked 2 goals, 9. They kicked themselves out of it. They had some really easy chances. We saw Hipwood's shock of a miss. And to say my last bit on the umpiring thing, if you take if you take your chances, you're not having to be at the mercy of late calls in the game. If you were a good enough side, you would have been up by a couple of goals. Had you taken your chances. So you can't blame umpires.
Same for Geelong too. Like we could have ended the game in the second quarter.
We should have been 7 goals up.
Yeah,
if we actually made the most of our chances. Yep. So no one talks about that. But we talk about the umpiring decision late in the game. That is my say on the game.
Fair call.
Good results. That's all I'll say.
Tell that to Cameron Mooney on Raf Clark back in 2000. And I'm sure you weren't happy with that result, Tiz, and blaming the umpires back then. I just feel,
I'm much more knowledgeable now than I was at 19.
You just cost us the game.
Important moments matter.
Yeah.
And umpiring decisions do matter, and when they happen do matter. And that's the last I'll say on it. I just think it's a bit silly for people to be getting up and about everything. Just move on and see what happens. I'm not so pessimistic about the Brisbane Lions. We're 2 rounds into a 22 rounds season or 22 game season.
Yep.
They've got plenty of chances. I remember one year Sydney started 0-6 and went on to make finals and play pretty well. I know it's not something you want to hear is make finals when Lions are going for a flag, but every slip up can lead to lessons learned, and I think Fagan's a good coach and he can incite these boys to go harder and go all the way.
To ease the mind of any Brisbane fans listening, I wrote the Eagles off after a couple of losses early last year, and they bounced back and were very unlucky to lose to Collingwood and probably should have made it to the second week. And Brisbane should be back at the pointy end of the season, as everyone seems to think so, and they should get there. It needs to happen. Step 1 of their season needs to happen with a win against Collingwood, which on paper you think they should do pretty easily. But yeah, with all this turmoil of them being thrown around and doing what they're doing now, being stuck in Melbourne, that might muck them around a bit. And for what it's worth, I think the best player on the ground was Mark O'Connor, who completely shut Neil out of the game.
Yeah. And if I could touch one more thing on that, Mark Blitzav's just a little message.
Specifically,
at least you were in the bloody defensive 50 for once.
Yeah.
What were you doing up on the wing? Coaches, Blitz needs to be in the back line. We've watched it 2 weeks in a row where the key forwards have been getting all the ball because you've got Hendo and some other spud trying to play on him. Henry and Collar were good players, but they cannot handle a key forward on their own. Blitzavs is a great key back. Keep him in the defensive 50 on a key back, or just go home. Call it quits now, Cats, if you're not going to play him down back.
Shook, you spoke to this, and I don't want to get too Geelong focused because we're going to move on to the other games and briefly go through those. But you said Harry Taylor will be a big loss, and after 2 games, and especially over the last couple of weeks,
we feel it.
We are feeling it.
Mm-hmm.
Taylor, you don't know what you have till it's gone, and Taylor's
Taylor
out.
come back.
we need the 35-year-old Harry Taylor, but just goes to show how well Taylor shut down a key forward.
Yeah,
and how much we lent on him to be sort of solid down back. So please come back, Harry Taylor. Even though he's 35, but that's okay.
We'll whip through the
the
quick tips of the rest of the games,
Yeah,
or do you want to do the results of the...
We'll quickly go through the results, Slings, and we'll get stuck into the tips as you are very excited. Sydney remain undefeated with a comprehensive 33-point win at home against the Crows. That was a spicy game, and boy, the Swans are very good.
Mm-hmm.
Plenty of talking points out of that one. Essendon go from bad to worse, going down by 54 points to Port Adelaide and Adelaide. That was a bit of a training drill from all reports. The D start off 2-0, accounting for the Saints by 3 goals in a really impressive win.
Didn't see that coming from the Demons.
That was a very, very nice win. Gold Coast put the Roos away in Queensland, recording a 10-goal win. Just very disappointing for the Roos, and it's going to be a long season for them. You clearly covered the game. I was going to mention about the Bond sealed the deal.
Yes,
and
he did.
He was
that
that
good.
good.
So good. We just talk about him
again.
again.
We talk about him again. Yep. GWS will be hurting even more. No, disgraceful
Really bad.
performance.
What was your famous quote about GWS? What did you famously call them?
Did I say they're soft?
I believe you called them a plastic fake club.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll lock it in, Eddie. That sounds pretty good to me.
Putting words in his mouth.
Putting words into my mouth that I said to myself. They went down to the Dockers by 31. If they kick straight at Freo, I reckon it would have been 80. But yeah, very impressive by the Dockers and GWS. A lot of work to do, unfortunately.
All round though, pretty good round of games, and we look into the next week, and this should have some massive ramifications again, as I've already said. But first up, Brisbane and Collingwood.
This one's at the Gabba, and I think... Oh, no, it's not at the Gabba. It's at Marvel.
No, it's not at the Gabba.
I've got very old notes from 1963. Brisbane...
Fitzroy and Collingwood.
I'm going to go Brisbane just only because it's a disaster game. If they go down here, they're in all sorts of trouble. But I think Brisbane on talent, and it's an urgent time for them.
Yeah, Brisbane easily, I think. They still have
Easily.
the talent, and that last minute shake up is going to instill them with a bit of desire to bloody put a pounding onto the Pies.
Oh my goodness.
Bloody good.
I've got Brisbane as well. They need to bounce back. The Bulldogs and North Melbourne have the Good Friday game, which I have tipped the Bulldogs for obvious reasons.
Short will probably just be doing footy tips. Did we get his tips by any chance?
No, we didn't, but he's at work, so that's okay.
Everyone's entitled to their opinion, except Short, and he's at work. I'm going the Dogs as well. I think,
you can't not go for the Dogs there. Pretty quick one.
I don't know if I'll watch that, to be honest. Richmond have Sydney at the MCG.
There actually is another game on Friday night. It is Adelaide and Gold Coast.
I think you've lost your tipping duties, Tiz.
Langs actually has a live. I've got a Google Doc version that's 35 years old. So Langs, please.
Yeah, Adelaide and Gold Coast on the Friday night in Adelaide. So I've actually tipped Adelaide.
I'm going to have to go Adelaide as well because they're at
Adelaide.
home.
Mark Prosciutto.
in Adelaide. I think, Adelaide just going to be a close one.
Adelaide are looking good, but I've actually gone Gold Coast.
Oh my goodness, okay.
Interesting.
Richmond, oh my goodness, this is going to be game of the millennium.
This is
Richmond and Sydney at the MCG. I've tipped Richmond, but I really think the Swans can win this.
I 100% agree with you.
Yeah.
I'm not brave enough to tip Sydney, but I think they're a massive chance to topple them.
Yeah.
It's funny, you mentioned one of the best games of the millennium coming up last year. It was complete opposite. It was one of the worst games of all time.
Righto.
When it was, you remember they just parked the bus and it was like 40-something each.
Yeah, hopefully it's the opposite of that.
She'll go
Tigers.
Swans.
Tigers. Gotta go Tigers.
Yeah.
Mate,
No.
I'm not going to go the silly choices every round because I'm currently in the clear by a game.
All right,
I'm the best
all right.
tips to hear, so I'm going to
I
stick
can
by
change
it.
these tips, so I'll change that to Sydney. Essendon and St Kilda are playing at Marvel. Saints, for me, to bounce back. They looked pretty sluggish after that rain-heavily affected game against the Giants in round one.
Very tricky. I'll give the Bombers a decent chance, but I'm going to go the Saints. So Saints in a close one. Essendon have to give something here.
I've got to go the Saints. I think they got the skills and the talent to win it.
Bombers have just lost Caldwell, Shield and Draper for about a month.
That is another reason why I also went the Saints.
Can we add a margin to this and say 100 points?
Like 1 million points.
All right.
Optus Stadium, West Coast versus Port. This should be an absolute cracker as well. A big test for Port because they haven't actually played anyone with real medal so far this year. I have tipped Port though in saying that, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Eagles bounce back at home.
I have gone the Eagles home ground predominantly, and I almost thought people would probably go Port. So I've gone the Eagles, thinking a good win at home.
Port Adelaide.
Okay.
I just think they look really...
Yep.
I've jumped on your wagon, Langers. I think Port are a great team.
Join the bus, mate. Carlton and Fremantle at Marvel. Another huge game.
This is really tough.
I've tipped Carlton.
I think the Dockers. This is just with the way they went about it. If they can bring that to Melbourne, they'll be celebrating their second win.
Well, I was looking at the Dockers, but Fife didn't play out the game. Did he play out the game after he got the head knock?
He's out.
So he's going to miss.
Yeah.
Fife is one bloody important player for the Freo Dockers, so I'm going for Carlton.
I've tipped Carlton 3 weeks in a row, so surely third time lucky that actually
Third time's the charm. It's like when you were tipping Adelaide every week.
Can't lose 11 in a row.
I tipped David Mundy to get 40 disposals again.
Yeah,
35 over the weekend. That was really good.
Giants and Melbourne. I've tipped Melbourne for obvious reasons. Demons going very well, and Giants honestly look like they could about to fall apart, and they're in coach in jeopardy territory.
This one's a Monica, and I've also gone the Melbourne Demons. The brand seems to stack up, and GWS identity is gone. So
they lost their plastic ID cards.
Wow.
Yeah, are you sure it's at Manukau? With your fixture, I would have thought it was at the Telstra Dome or something like that.
Yeah,
no, it is at Manukau, and I
ago.
think the Demons are looking really impressive, so I think the Demons will get it done.
Easter Monday, Cats versus Hawks. With no confidence, I've tipped the Cats.
Again, I agree. I was very tempted to go Hawthorn, but Geelong have to play better than they did last week against the Lions.
I like the
Close
performance.
one.
I like the performance of the Hawks against the Tigers. They look young and up and coming, but I think the Cats will get some crucial ins for the game and also a bit of an attitude strike. So I think Menegola and even maybe Duncan might be right to come back in.
Yeah,
and I reckon that changes the team
Duncan's
dynamic.
very
up.
Duncan's
spicy.
a chance.
I really hope Brad Close comes in for Gary Rowan too, because they can play similar positions and Close is a good mark.
Can Dalhouse get dropped? He did nothing.
Oh my goodness.
He did nothing.
Just
on the
ask a
weekend.
personal question. Just message his Dallas. Can you please get dropped?
Yeah.
Good stuff. So, boys, just to finish off, we've gone sort of at our limit here, but we were going to touch on the St Kilda and Melbourne game from last week, which was obviously the Spuds game, the time to talk game. So, on a semi-serious but nice note, it's really good to see that football can bring people together. There's obviously a lot more to life other than football, but obviously that's what this podcast was pretty much based upon, was us four watching us three at the moment, but us four watching the footy together. And I'm sure anyone listening can attest to watching the footy with their mates, with their dad, with their cousin or crazy Uncle Jeff or whatever it is.
Jeff.
So yeah, just wanted to bring to the attention the Time to Talk charity, I guess you could call it, or the initiative, just to make sure you're checking in with your mates, even if it is to text them how their team's going to go this week, or make fun of them that their team lost, but just check in with them and just see how your mates, your dad or whoever it is going. And football can be a great bridge to have those conversations. So yeah, footy's had some great memories for all of us, but yeah.
Cool. Yeah, it's a really good initiative, and yeah, take the time to just jump on the phone and give someone a call, and we'll be back with the games and silliness next week.
Yeah, absolutely. The AFL do these sort of initiatives really, absolutely spotless. So it was great to sort of bring that up, bring it to light, and I mean unfortunately for Danny, and his family will be hurting a lot and for a long time coming. But at the very least, we've made a positive out of it. It's like, okay, well that's happened. How can we prevent it from happening to more individuals in the future? And they've got a great touch on that game. So
and left an awesome legacy.
Yes. Yep. Absolutely.
Otherwise, we'll be back next week. The Awesome Foursome will be together again. Make sure you are following us on Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, all those outlets, Instagram. We love getting we're getting some more fan interaction lately on Twitter and Instagram especially. So if you do see one of our posts, make sure you do leave a comment, because we love seeing it. Otherwise, boys, thanks for joining me this week.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Great to be here.
We'll be back next week. Thanks for listening to this episode. Make sure you follow us on Facebook and Twitter. AFL Unlimited, because footy is limitless.